All right, so we've got the C3500 here. Today we're going to take the bed off, put it on there. What we're going to do is, like you've seen in the other videos, we're going to take that 2005 F-350 frame, put a dual axle in it. We're going to put the dually bed, everything on there, put this cab. This truck got painted right before I bought it, so we're going to use it, and we're going to change the front clips to make it match the Blazer. And then once we get all the body mounts, everything fabricated, we're going to get a Dodge Cummins 12 valve, hopefully like a 93 and up, so it'll have the P pump and be intercooled and everything like that. We'll turn it up a little bit, probably make about 400 horsepower, 800 foot-pounds of torque. And once we do that, we'll get it all together, and then we'll just be daily driving it just like it was a brand new F-350 or 3500 right off the lot. So today we got the frame back from getting shortened. We had it shortened to 164.5. You see right in here, they came in, they cut a plate on the CNC machine, stamped it out. What they did is they actually took a diamond, and so if the diamond's like this, they actually turned it like this, so the flat part is touching the top of the frame and the bottom of the frame, basically pushing them against each other. And they cut it in what they call a Z, so that way it's a little bit stronger than just doing a straight cut. They welded all that in, welded the diamond plate in here in the C channel, and then put the little bit nicer plate on the inside, so once we get this all fabbed up and painted, you won't even know that it got cut. Plus you have a cool looking little plate right there, it makes it look a little bit sportier. Also, when they were when they shortened it, they found a little diamond in the frame, so what that means is basically the frame and the mounts and everything were staggered, so they're able to get that out too. So that was a benefit to, rather than just finding one that was the exact match and dropping it all there, still having it walk down the road, crab it like a crab. So what we've done is we've taken the chain hoist and turned it loose from the C30, turned the bed loose from the C30, picked it up with the chain hoist here. I left the frame and everything on the trailer because it's a lot easier to move it around than trying to push it with the tractor, push it with hands and steer the wheels and the axles and everything. So we have the bed here hung up. We're going to get this chain out of the way here in just a second and get everything set down on there and take some measurements. We'll make a couple little tabs. The bed bolts on a Squarebody are 31 inches apart as far as frame width to the center of the frame. The forwards are 35, so rather than drill new holes in the bed, we're just going to take some of this flat stock right over here, make a few tabs, weld it into the frame, and then drill straight through where the bed holes are to the frame so that everything will bolt right back up. It'll be a lot cleaner and make the bed look like it's still on a Chevrolet frame. So that's where we're at right now. We'll get this sort of set, kind of touch back, take a couple preliminary measurements, measure it a couple times, cut a few mounts, start burning them in there. Then we'll be ready to move on to doing the cab. So we got bed, we've shifted a whole bunch of stuff around. We've got the bed on here now, we got it squared up, lined up. Sit on here perfect. We're still gonna have space to put the gooseneck hitch in later on. We got the cab just about right this side's a little bit. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of massaging with the hammer. But we got this side lined up. The front clip, we're gonna have to come through here and cut these little tabs off right here, and then we'll get the front clip sitting level. We'll have to make a crossmember for it. Right through here, we're gonna have to shift some mounts back a little bit to get everything lined up. We're gonna go with the S&B filter mounts instead of these Ford ones that are all crumbly. They actually end up being a little bit cheaper than the Ford mounts. And then back here, we cleared the shackle and everything just fine. Come right back here, I'll show you how we're going to make this bed fit, because it's a little bit more narrow than the Ford frame. So the Ford frame is right here where the Chevrolet frame was, right here. So this is 35 center the bolt hole to center the bolt hole. The Chevrolet is 31 inches. So we're just gonna come in here with some cardboard, make a little template, cut it out, drill it, we'll weld it in, we'll drill it from the top side so it's straight, and then we'll just get some carriage bolts and bolt it down. We'll do the same on the other side, and then we'll just work our way all the way forward so we have all 8 of the bolts in. And then after that, we'll move on to the cab mounts, cut all those off, burn all them in, and then we'll be pretty much home free. And then we'll just have to find a motor and put a transmission in it, motor, wire it all up and everything, and then we'll be ready to hit the road. All right, so since the last time we got the bed and everything squared up on the frame, we came in and added these tabs. There's gonna be 8 of them total. Right now we've got 4 of them in there just to kind of get everything square so we can set the body and the front clip on there. So we just cut some plates, just little square plates, tucked them in the frame, had Jermichael weld them all in there nice and neat. Like I said, we've got 4, we're gonna have to add 4 more. We'll have to make a little exception for the one by the fuel tank cross member. Probably have to drill it out and then bolt it from the bottom side, just where the bolt can go back through there. But we've got those on there. So after we welded in the mounts on the back, got everything squared up on the old mounts before we cut them off for the truck. So we're going to use the Ford mounts with the S&B filter body mounts. So we lined everything up on the mounts the way they were from Ford. I took the old rubber, and you can see it's notched right here. So it sits right down in the Ford mounts. So I stuck that through there, used a small 12-inch drill bit to drill from the bottom through the top. And then I took a step bit and drilled from the top to the next step, and then took a 3/8 drill bit and drilled it the rest of the way. So it's all centered up on the mount and everything. So we had to do 6 holes. Some people will probably freak out because we drilled the floor pan, but it was the least invasive way to make everything mount up on the F-350 frame. So we got some bolts we're waiting on. These are a little bit too short, but they drop right down through there. Once I put the fat mat and the sound deadener down, put the carpet on top, you don't even know these bolts are here. Fortunately, if you look right back here, this area we're able to actually hammer down. We already did it on the other side to get it a little bit flatter. So everything's going to line up, bolt up, and be minimal, some people will say destruction, to the floor pan, to the cab, keeping it as original as possible. We're still able to use a lot of the structure from the square body. The holes actually go straight through the square body original mounting structure, just in about 3 inches off position. So that will make a lot of old school people happy and keep everything sturdy in the way it's supposed to be. And then up front, started working on the front clip to get it all squared off so it doesn't look like it was in a front end collision like last time. So we came in here, cut about 6 inches out of the cross member width-wise, about 2 inches deep. Had to cut some more out of the fender wells as well, but we got that cut out. Of course, we're going to get some mounts made up for the S&B filters Crossmember mount, or sorry, core support mount. We'll get those mated up and everything, so this isn't sitting, squeaking and rubbing going down the road on the frame. But we'll get it all in here and everything, get that tidied up. We'll probably either get this sandblasted or just strip it. Of course, we're gonna have to touch it up and paint it, fix a couple little things, run a few different options as far as the wheel wells, get them so they're not spraying mud and everything on the inside of the truck. But tonight we're going to start doing some cab mounts, get all that stuff squared away, and then we'll go to putting the blue truck back on the blue bed back on the blue truck, and then we'll start painting and stripping everything, get it kind of ready to paint the frame. So what we have here is we have the S&B silicone body mounts. They're probably the most highly recommended mounts on the market over the OEM Ford ones, which you saw earlier kind of crumble apart. So they actually come with 2 pieces of silicone rubber, new plates that go between them. They have this little rubber silicone piece that kind of denotes top and bottom. Recapping what we did tonight, we have mounted the rear mounts to the frame. We got everything squared up, tacked them in place so they won't move anywhere. We'll get Jermichael in here to weld those up later this week. The front, we had to get a little creative to get it all squared up. So we took a chain and a chain jack, hooked it to the lift arm on the tractor, hooked it to the far side of the cab, pulled it because it was a little bit twisted with those back mounts. So we just slid it over a little bit. It's dead on the money now, so tomorrow we get our bolts in, we'll come in. Might have to re-drill the holes, not really sure yet. Get that done up front, get the back done, and then we'll be good to move on to spacing the back up a little bit, because you can see We got the cab where we need it at, but our bed gap is a little bit off. To be able to fit the gooseneck hitch, we're gonna have to bring the bed up a little bit anyways. So we'll get that dialed in. And after that, we'll take it apart, put the blue bed back on the crew cab for now, clear everything off of the frame, put it on the gooseneck, take it up the road, blast it off, and then start painting it and putting everything back on there, start to make the frame look a little bit better, look all brand new and everything. And make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. You might wonder where you find the 69,000 mile 12 valve Cummins. You find it in a rotten RV on Facebook Marketplace at 12 o'clock at night. You pay the guy to take it out so you don't have to throw the rotten RV away. And then you start disassembling it. So since the last time we did a video, we have cut up the core support, welded in the support mounts, and then I have these mounts made by Crazy Creations that go right here to hold the front clip. We're gonna get the motor torn the rest of the way apart and test fit it in here with the motor mounts before we burn these in all the way past these little tacks we have. So far we've taken the Allison 542A off of the Cummins. We've taken the torque converter off of the Cummins, and now we're taking this Allison adapter plate off. We can get the motor mounts in next week. Bolt it in there, kind of do a test fit, make sure. The biggest thing we're looking for is that this hump right here, that the valve covers on top of the Cummins, will clear that. And we have enough space forwards and backwards. We're still kind of deciding what color to paint the motor, so if you have an opinion, kind of the options are the classic Chevy Hugger orange that basically all the small blocks were ever painted, the Cummins red, the Cummins tan, or any other Cummins color. So if you have an opinion on what color to do, drop a comment below and let us know what color you think we should paint the motor. Alright, so Joe Michael's tank tip of the day for keeping your harmonic balance on your 12 valve from spinning when you're taking your flywheel off is set of vice grips. So if you're trying to do the same thing, buy your cheap set of cobalt vice grips that are made in China. They'll do the job. we have gotten the Carrot Customs motor mounts on. We're working on getting the turbo off. We're probably gonna have to clock it because it is digging into the mount a little bit right there. You can see over here, we have the frame side of the Carrot Custom mounts. This first hole is supposed to be if you're gonna use electric fans. The second hole is to use the manual fan, so we're gonna try to put it in this second hole right here. They just bolt in and come with all the hardware. Took the compressor off, the air compressor that was on it that came on it from a school bus. We took that off. That's where the vacuum pump slash power steering pump will go. And then you can see the other mounts in right here. No clearance issues on this side. So we'll get this turbo off and we'll get it in. We have set the 12 valve into the Ford frame, sort of. We're gonna have to do some more trimming back here on the firewall to be able to use the rear hole on these Carrot mounts. Otherwise, we will not have enough space to run an intercooler, radiator, and AC condenser, and then we're probably gonna end up running electric fans. Goes in pretty easily. We're gonna have to get an oil pump. As you can see down here, it is touching and sitting down there, and it's not sat down all the way. So what we're gonna probably end up getting is a oil pan off of for a 12 valve that's in a Dodge pickup. Put that in there, and then retry again. Hopefully everything will fit. We're gonna have to either get a different turbo manifold or exhaust manifold for the turbo, or see if we can clock it, because obviously that sitting on the frame isn't going to do us any good. You can see we cut a little bit out. We're going to probably have to cut out a little bit more and then do a little bit of hammering and then weld a plate back in. Hopefully going to plumb up some fuel lines and everything to the fuel tank and kind of just do a test fire in the truck. With no exhaust or anything, just make sure everything's working like we should, and then we'll move on from there and get some other stuff added to it, and we'll see you next time. All right, so today we're finished welding up the body mounts along the frame. Emma's wiping the frame down with some acetone. We've already wire wheeled the whole frame to get all the frame coating that Ford uses, which is basically just like grease. So we've gotten it off, we're wiping it down. We're gonna paint it later this week. All we did is get some acetone, wiped everything down to kind of neutralize and grease everything. We're not going to use any fancy 415 or anything like that. We're just going to use some Rust-Oleum farm and equipment industrial paint. It's supposed to be resistant to oil and fuel and everything like that, just like the Eastman products are, but it's a whole lot cheaper. And you just cut it down with some acetone. So we'll put it in the gun, roll it outside, shoot it with a gloss flash, and hopefully it'll turn out good. Alright, so now we've got the frame blown off, I'll kind of tell you what we're going to do. So we're going to take this Harbor Freight paint gun. You can get it for like 20 bucks for 30 bucks with the regulators, the filter, and everything. It's just a gravity fed gun, a really cheap gun. We got some Rust-Oleum farm and implement paint. It's weather resistant, it's fuel resistant, and it's supposed to penetrate any rust. We've already wire wheeled the whole frame as you saw, so shouldn't be a whole lot of rust, but it's basically a poor man's Por 15. We're gonna mix it with probably, this gun sprays 20 ounces at a time, so we'll probably mix it with a cap of hardener to kind of speed it up a little bit, and we're gonna cut it down 2-to-1 with some acetone. So we'll mix it up, get suited up, and spray it, and you'll see throughout the spraying process and what it looks like in the end. Alright, so we got the color laid down on the frame. We painted the axle. We didn't paint the rear axle because of course we're going to get a dually axle for it later on. But everything turned out pretty good. All we used is the Rust-Oleum farm and equipment paint with a little bit of hardener in it. We did go with glossy over matte black. I just like the way glossy looks better. Once it goes to the river for the first time, it's not going to be glossy anymore anyway. So went with the gloss, turned out really well. Everything kind of matches, looks good. The front axle's painted. So next thing, we're going to get transmission and transfer case, and then we'll be able to put the motor in. The goal is going to be to get it running before we put the body on it, so we don't have to fight anything major once it's running, or once the cab's on there. Until we get some money for that, we're going to go ahead and do the brake lines and get them all run up here and get that stuff sort of sorted out for when the cab goes on. We'll put the fuel tank back in, do the fuel lines, because obviously you can't run the motor without fuel lines. So we'll get all that set up, get the brake lines reattached, parking brake lines back there reattached, and everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Alright, so today we've got the 12 valve in the truck hooked up to the Carrot custom mounts. We got our ZF6. We picked it up on Facebook Marketplace. So I got 106,000 miles. Guy pulled it and put it in automatic, so it was a really good find. We paid a little bit less than the asking price. Generally, I saw them for about 4,000. We only paid $2 for this. We have the Mike Fuchs 12 valve to ZF6 adapter plate. This hooks to 6.0 and up ZF6s, and then you run the 6.0 or 6.4 starter with a Luck 300 flywheel, and then you just get the ZF6 clutch for like a F-350 or 250. So we're gonna get it all bolted in, torqued down. I couldn't really find a torque setting on it. It's anywhere from 30 to 60 foot-pounds, so we're just gonna put 60 foot-pounds on it and Loctite. We're just gonna mock everything up. Yes, we're gonna paint the motor, and then we're gonna, you can see right in here, the fluid from the seal, so we're gonna get this whole transmission resealed, so it'll basically be like a brand new transmission. Of course, going to put a new clutch and flywheel. All right, so we've got the adapter plate bolted on now. It comes with these 2 alignment pins and all the bolts to hook it to the block. So one of the alignment pins goes right here. Of course, it's just to line up the transmission, and the other one goes right here. So then we're just going to pick up the transmission on the transmission jack, hopefully, and get it all slid and bolted in, and then we're going to work on getting the crossmember set up. The only thing we have left really, this major things to get is a dually axle, 05 and up, and MP 271 transfer case is what we want to run. That's going to be the manual shifted transfer case, so it'll kind of keep the old school technology and look going on with this truck while still having the modern frame, axles, and drivetrain. All right, so we tried to use a transmission jack. This transmission is just a little too long for it. You really need 2 of them, and it was kind of precariously tipping back and forth. So we went with the good old John Deere patented transmission hoist. So we'll get it chained up here and get it slid onto the adapter and the dowel pins and get it all in place. Right about here is where I realized the factory location for the crossmember isn't going to work, and where we needed to slide it back to mount it is exactly where I had the frame shortened, so it's got those trusses in there. What we're doing is we had to get 2 of the cross members for F-350. I'm pretty sure 99 to 2010 are all the same. But they've got these slots for the transmission mount. But because we have the frame shortened to 165.5, the trusses that were welded into the frame go right, of course, where this is supposed to go. So what we're doing is we cut this end off of this cross member, and I got another one. We're trimming this little edge off right here. We're going to inlay it on the underside of here, cleaned all this dirt out of here, weld it up, so hopefully it'll be a little bit stronger than the factory one, but it'll also work for our application, and then we'll go from there. So we had to do a little change of plans. We're gonna shorten this up and cut it off right here. And then Joe Michael's gonna burn it in, and we're gonna take this slotted hole and lay it back over these other slots and burn it back in. That way we don't have to re-drill this. And if we put it on there and then drilled it, it would basically ruin all of its structural integrity. So we're gonna cut it off, and then we're just gonna weld this back in separately to give a little extra beef right here. And then we're gonna have to come in here with some straps and strap it because we cut it a little bit too short. So we'll strap it and we'll be good to go. So we let Joe Michael get it tacked in. We're going to slide in here and just check, make sure everything looks like we want it to. It does, so we're going to let Joe Michael finish welding it up, and then we're going to drill some holes in the frame and go ahead and get it mounted up like we need it to be. You can see in the background, I'm working on cleaning off this B&W hitch we picked up from the junkyard. $200 for a $600 hitch, so we're going to clean it up and repaint it. Alright, so what we did is we cut this piece off down here on the Crossmember. So we got that off. Took both sides of this right here so that it'll saddle on the frame. We're waiting on the transmission bushing to come in this afternoon. We'll get it mounted up. But you can see right here, what we did is we cut the shoulder off of this one, trimmed it down. We got Joe Michael to weld it in here. We put the bracing in right there. And then we cut this piece off because the slots wouldn't line up, and welded it back in here just to give it a little bit of extra support. But that's how you make a Crossmember for Cummins with a ZF6 on a Ford frame with a Squarebody. We didn't do anything really special for the paint. We just went with some Rust-Oleum brown primer, and then I got some silver for the Gooseneck hitch. I'm not too happy with it. It's super sparkly, so hopefully that's going to wear off after a while. And then we're just going to spray paint the Crossmember black. You'll see right here, I got my father-in-law over at the house for Christmas. We're going to go ahead and mark this Crossmember. We went ahead and drilled it. We're going to drill it with a small drill bit, and then we're going to run 1/2-inch bolts. Of course, when you're drilling something like this, you want to keep it lubricated. And you can see we're putting the Gooseneck hitch in right here. It's 120 foot-pounds on those. I got to get a bigger socket, and we'll get that torqued down, and we'll be ready to go. Alright, so we've got the front support that goes right here unbolted because obviously the intercooler is going to go behind it. I laid our cardboard template in there. I traced it out a little bit. I'm about to just take some measurements from the bottom down here to the fender on both sides to make sure we're pretty much centered. Obviously you can see up here the hood latch is probably going to hit. So we're either going to trim that one down or might just have to get hood pins, kind of like an old school hot rod, and just do that so we can fit the intercooler in there. But the radiator to go behind it and the condenser I'm going to put in front of it if it'll fit, but that's where we're at right now. So we'll get started on this and we'll pick it back up in a few minutes once we get it kind of cut out and kind of get it mocked up. I think I should just cut it off clean on the top. That's perfect. We got the 12 valve in here. We took the transmission out, took it to the transmission shop. Found out that it has a bad tail housing, so they're going to change it out and get it back to us. I've gotten the flywheel machined. But today, we're going to take the timing cover off right here and do the infamous killer dowel pin. You can pick this up. It was like $15 on Amazon. We're just going to take the timing cover off, put a little bit of Loctite on here, put it back in place so we don't have any dowel pins falling out and munching all the time in here. so right in here, we've got the timing cover off. You can see this is the timing case. This little guy right here is the one that always comes out and gets everybody in trouble and falls off in the motor. So you can see right now it's supposed to be flush. It's already kind of worked its way out a little bit. So I'm gonna take a punch, knock that back in place, take that little aluminum piece of metal, and we'll pull this bolt out and run that thing in with that on it. And then we'll be good to go. And we won't have any little dowel rods riding around in here. Alright, so what you just saw is we put the 12 valve kilodowel pin piece in there. It basically goes in right there. We put it to 18 foot-pounds just like everything else. We used a little bit of blue Loctite. Yeah, I know blue Loctite, once it gets hot, it's going to kind of break down. But that'll hold it in there, so 18 foot-pounds like it's supposed to be. We resealed the timing cover. We had to put the seal in place. I didn't buy the tool, so we're going to kind of roll the dice and see. This is the depth gauge. I just used it to hammer the seal in from the back side. And then I just pulled it out and put it in the front and made sure it wasn't any deeper than it needed to be. And so we put it in. You gotta wait 4 hours. after you pull this little plastic piece out right here for the PTFE seal to sit down on the crank. So we just barely put the harmonic balancer back on there so we didn't forget where we had it, because we punched both the crank and the harmonic balancer. So we got all that done, and on the next video we'll do the fuel lines or something else, and we'll get a little closer to firing up. All right guys, so today we're going to be doing the fuel lines on the Super Dually. We're going to run the factory Ford hard lines from the tank as far up as they'll go. Because we shortened the frame roughly about 10 inches, they're basically going to go all the way to the upturn in the frame, and then we're going to use some AN line and some connectors to run the rest of the way. One, because it's nice and it's diesel fuel resistant, but two, it'll kind of also give it that old school hot rod look that everybody's used to. We're going to use the red and blue fittings. We're going to use -6 for the return line, and we're going to use -8 right here for the feed line to the pump. I got all this stuff on Amazon. Evil Energy is the brand. This is not the PTFE hose. This is just the regular rubber hose with the stainless steel embedded into the line, and then of course it's wrapped in stainless steel too for abrasion resistance. This little kit was actually pretty handy. It came with, I think it's basically 8 fittings and then the little holders to separate the lines right here. I had to pick up a couple extra pieces to connect to the hard lines. We're just using these Russell 5/16 quick connect for the return, and the exact same thing but in 3/8 to connect to the hard line that Ford uses right there. And then if you look, you can bundle it. I have destroyed a ton of AN lines with regular adjustable wrenches, or putting them in a vise with a rag around them. So if you bundled it up, it would made it like $64 instead of $50. So basically you got $10 off an AN wrench so you don't tear up all your AN fittings. Keep them looking nice. Now to hook into the factory Cummins lift pump, you're going to need a male -8 to 14 by ½ inch thread, 14 thread count ½ inch feed. So we're going to hook that into the lift pump, the factory Cummins lift pump, and then hook our -8 AN line into that. For the return line out of the P pump, so it can be AN instead of just a gear clamp on it, you're going to get this. I got this from Amazon too. It's just a vibrant fitting. It's a -6 male banjo, so it's just going to screw right in like the factory Cummins one did, and then we'll just run it back to the fuel tank. So watch, enjoy, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let us know if you have any questions.
All right, so right here you can see we had to replace the factory Ford hardline connectors. I didn't use the correct tool and cracked them, so I'm gonna put these in right here and we'll go from there. You'll see in a second, it was really hard to get them pressed in. My dad has seen a video where someone just drilled a 2x4 and split it and put it in between it, and then you just hammer them in is how they're supposed to go. So in a second you'll see us do that. If you got any questions or like the tip, let us know in the comments below. So here's what I was talking about, where we drilled the 2x4 and split it and put it in the vise to pinch that press fit hose in there, and then you just tap that little fitting right in there. I'm going to snake it through the frame and click it right in. There's a couple of these quick release tools to turn those loose and save them. I would definitely recommend picking one of those up. We just use some slide in barbs right there to go to the factory connection, and just follow along and you'll see how we get the fuel system plumbed up and ready to fire. Alright, so we had to remove the factory AC compressor location to be able to get to the P-pump return line. You'll see in a second right here, it was just a little bit too tight. So to avoid removing the pump, I just ground a little bit of the intake down where there was some excess. I was able to get that return line fitting out and the banjo fitting in. So that was definitely worth the hassle. Try that. So right here, we're just feeding the line behind the injector lines, run it nice and neatly down the side of the block. There's a little pocket in the frame. We stuck it around through that. Drew's trying to keep everything as tucked in and neat in this factory as possible. It's actually turned out really good. I was pretty pleased with it. Hopefully the brake lines turn out as good as that, and everything will be looking right. Here's that hole in the frame I was talking about where we ran everything down through to keep it clean. You'll see how it turns out. We're going to put a little bit of wire loom on these hoses just for some abrasion resistance as far as those little soft hoses go. Pretty pleased with how the fuel system turned out, and hopefully we'll get it fired up soon. Y'all can see that on the next video.
So we've got the motor in, it's bolted in. Unfortunately, we didn't get the pilot bearing bored out to the right size, so we're going to pull the flywheel off. Before we do that, we've got the starter in from a 6.0 or 6.4 Power Stroke. Got a fresh 1000 crank-net battery hooked up to the leads here. We have our remote start button here, and then we have these retractable test leads run over here to the fuel shut-off switch so that we can hit the button, start it. Just want to make sure there's no leaks or anything before we move on. Once we get the flywheel back later this week, we will install the clutch, transmission, transfer case, and then we'll get doing some wiring and move the bodies over, and we should be running hopefully in about 2 months. So stay tuned and you'll see this thing fire up. Alright, so the ZF6 that we put into the Super Dually behind me, when I got it, either it was already cracked on the tail housing where the transmission mount goes, or we cracked it when we were picking up and moving it. I'm not really sure. So I had to get a new tail housing. The only reason we found that is I wanted to get it resealed before we put it in the truck, because there's nothing worse than putting something in there you think it's supposed to be good, and then you have a leak or something like that. So we did that. It's a ZF6, it's a 6-speed manual, or a 5-speed manual with an overdrive and a low. So that's nice if you hook up to the Gooseneck with a big trailer or something like that. Before we put the transmission, obviously we had to put the clutch in, we had to put the flywheel on, we had to get the torque settings right on all of those. Of course, we used a little bit of Loctite, got everything torqued down, put the clutch in. That was a little bit of a task. We had to use basically some welding clamps, some C-clamps to get the springs compressed enough on the clutch to get the bolts to start. So for the final install with ZF6, because half the shop is concrete and the other half is gravel, it makes it difficult when you gotta pick something heavy up, because this truck is getting really wide with the dually axle and everything, so it's taking up a lot of floor space. What we had to do is we put the transmission in the center and then picked it up with the transmission hoist and got it where we wanted to, and that way we were able to lower it down. I didn't want to use the front end loader this time because I think that's how I cracked the tail housing, but also I wanted to have a little more control over it. That thing's great for moving big stuff around, but you can somewhat control most of it with some of the precision, like lining the clutches up and everything in the input shaft and getting it all pushed together. I wanted to have a little more precision, so we used the engine hoist, and then we were able to roll the frame forwards and backwards how we needed to get the transmission lined up on the pins and get it bolted in place. I paid $2,000 for it. So all in, I was right at $2,700. The going price for one of those, not resealed or anything like that, is about $4,000, and those typically have way more than the mileage. That transmission had less than 100,000 miles. I think it was like 60,000 miles or something. And then we put the transfer case on the back of it. So we went to 271 because it bolts right up to the ZF6. We had a 34 spline output shaft for the ZF6, so I just made sure I got a 34 spline input shaft on the 271. Bolts all together. I use it, because of course, trying to keep the old school look on this truck with much of modern features. I don't like the electric shift transfer case like we have in our F-350. And then two, just to keep the old school look of the shifter in the floor. And I like to have the idea of having a manual transmission and a manual shifted transfer case. And that was a really good deal too. What I've kind of learned from this whole build, if you're building something yourself, you gotta use this tip. If you see something out there, it does not hurt to go ahead and just message the person, see how much they want for it, and just go ahead and tell what you're willing to take for it. A lot of times I'll see something and save it on Marketplace, and then I'll go back in a week. If it's still there, I'll message the person and try to get the price down a little bit. But if you're patient enough, you can always find a good deal. So the dually axle, there's a pretty good story behind that. It's one of those things where you find it on Marketplace, sounds kind of sketchy, and you just kind of go with your gut. So I messaged the guy one week, he said, yeah, I got it, but you'll have to pull it out. Well, it's really hard to pull any rear end without a bunch of tools like a jack and everything where you can actually roll it around. Rear end had a pretty good amount of miles on it. It was out of a 6.0 F-350, so if you know anything about a 6.0, they break, they blow up a lot, they blow head gasket stuff. That's what happened to this one. So he pushed it down the hill in his yard into the woods and left it there for about 10 years, and then he decided to sell it. He was parting out and everything. So I messaged him back again. He said you have to pull it. About a week later, I was like, okay, this is the best deal I'm gonna get. It was $800. What I did is I pulled the cap on the diff, smelled it, and know that the fluid smelled burnt, put the cap back on it, and brought it home. Luckily, the guy's neighbor had helped him pull it because he had to carry it up a probably 175 to 100 yards hill with that rear, and it took 4 of us to pick it up to barely get it on the trailer. What I was gonna do is take the cherry picker and pick it up, and then pull the truck away and all that stuff. So luckily we didn't have to get into that. The reason I went with this rear end and the reason I took so long to find the rear end was I wanted to have a 373 gear ratio, which is what the front axle was. The reason I wanted that is we've got a diesel, so we don't really need a really high gear or a really low gearing or anything on there because it's got plenty of torque to move it. 373 gives me a little more fuel economy, a little bit more performance as far as not turning stupid high RPMs on the highway, and then it just makes it more drivable. As far as putting it in, we just put the frame on jack stands, undropped the old axle, pulled it out. We kept the leaf springs. There's X springs and K springs. X springs are a lot heavier duty springs, they ride a lot harsher. The K springs don't ride as rough. That's what's in this truck. And then we're going to put airbags on it later on down the road. It doesn't really matter that they don't hold, that they're not as stiff, because the airbags will make up for the difference. And that kind of gets us to where we're at right now with the bed and everything, and you'll see that in the upcoming videos. Alright, so today we're going to cover wiring. We've gone through and run new loom, everything from the rear of the truck to the front, patched up any issue areas we had. We would have soldered and used some heat shrink. This is the stuff we've been using is a 3-to-1. It looks like this. We have quarter, and then I'm pretty sure this is 3. This is half right here, so it shrinks 3-to-1. So it's this size, and it'll go down to 3 times smaller than that. So it's been really great. We've used it up here when we were doing the fuel solenoid switch, and some other places. Here's the fuel shut-off relay. So today we're going to show you how we went from this total mess right over here with all these wires that we've marked and everything, with all the different, where they go and what they do, all that good stuff. So from this to what will be a nice cleaned up looking area, we're gonna have to extend some wires, some things like that, but you'll see what it looks like from start to finish. So what we've done is we pulled the entire harness out of the blue truck that we're going to be using the body and everything for. Went through, popped off all the old deteriorated conduit, wiped it down with a Clorox wipe. I had to do some soldering right here where there were some worn out wires. That was the biggest reason I wanted to pull it out of the truck and go through all of it before we put it into the new frame, was just to make sure there's no shorts and everything. So then what I did is we have the fuel cinder wire from the Ford right here that's going to hook up to that Ford tank that we have in the truck. And then down there on the end, we have the axle speed sensor that we're going to use to hook up to the speedometer a little bit later on. And then I spliced in the Ford trailer hookup. That's the 7 to 5, the 7-way adapter, and then the regular little straight flat 4. It's all taped in there individually, so if you ever wanted to pull some of it out, you just pop the conduit off, cut that row of tape, and it'll all come off. So it looks pretty clean like this. I've got some 1/2-inch conduit. I'm just working my way down through here and installing that, and hopefully we'll get it set in the truck tomorrow. One, this makes the truck look nice and clean, and it looks like it's got a brand new feel, because it's got brand new conduit. All the wires been gone through, wiped off, and clean. But it also just gives me a little peace of mind knowing that all the wires don't have any shorts, don't have any stripped wiring that can cause a fire or cause a bad ground or a bad connection on some trailer lights or tail lights. Alright, so we're going through the wiring today. We're going to hook up the starter. We're going to hook up the fuel shutoff for the engine. What I did last night is, I got my wife to help me. We went through the diagram, took this harness out, took it to the house, went through the diagram, traced all the colors in the diagram to where they go to, and just took a little bit of electrical tape and marked everything. That way you can just go through here, you know exactly where everything needs to go, and you just hook it up. We have our 7-amp relay, our 8-amp relay for the fuel shutoff. We have all of our wire and everything over here. This is 3-to-1 heat shrink. You can pretty much pick it up anywhere. We can buy it at Bulky Works, so I bought a couple sticks. All the wire ends. Got a soldering iron right here warming up. We're about to solder this power wire to the starter back together. We'll run it over there, put a nice good crimp on the wire end, and then once we get everything run, we'll go back and put some wire loom on it and dress it up and keep it nice and clean. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and put new ends on here to go to the starter. That's your purple and red wire coming out of the one's coming out of the fuse block. One comes on this junction block right here. So it'll come over there. The big red one goes to the junction block, and it'll actually feed it and power everything else up. We put some it's like header wrap, but it's basically heat protected wire loom. We put it on here all the way up because of course we have the turbo here, we have the exhaust manifold, and then we'll have the exhaust coming out going past the starter. As far as for the battery cable, I hooked it up here. There's a hole right here in the frame that comes out. Unfortunately, the motor mount goes all the way inside this rail, so you can't snake from the front back. So we just ran it along the top here, snaked through this hole to avoid the exhaust that's going to go here, and then ran right through there. So we'll get all that hooked up, and then we'll be able to test key on power to do the fuel shutoff solenoid and everything else. All right guys, today we're going to be putting on these Gatekeeper LED pod mounts right here. The cool thing is they're steerable, so they're going to go right here on the knuckle. We're going to take a punch. We've already traced it. We're going to mark it, drill it out. We're going to start with a little drill bit, whatever size this is, and then we're going to work our way up to whatever size this is. It's worn off. So what it's going to end up looking like is it'll look like this over here. They send you some bolts, some grade 8 bolts, some nylock nuts. I put a little bit of anti-seize on there so they don't get gauded up. That's what it's going to look like. They attach to the knuckles. You're going to be able to steer it. And then we're going to hook all these. These are ox beam 3-inch driving lights. They come with a clear lens or the amber because we're going to use them as fog. And I have this weird obsession with orange. We're going to put the amber lenses in there. We're going to hook up the ox beam switch that they sent us up to it. We'll kind of do a little review on how to wire it and everything. We don't have the power steering hooked up yet, so we'll probably put this on the jack, and then we'll show you how they're steerable, how they work out, and we'll also show you how to use that ox beam switch as well. So stay tuned. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let us know if there's anything you'd like to see. Thanks. All right, so we have the Gatekeeper off-road knuckle mounts hooked up. They're steerable like we talked about. I went ahead and wired this outside the truck because this week I still got to go through and do all the wiring, clean everything up, make it start off the key switch instead of off the push button. You can see right here, we have the aux beam panel they sent us hooked up right here. You have your power wire, you run it to your 60 amp circuit breaker, then you go from your 60 amp breaker to the battery. This right here is the accessory wire. If you have a newer truck that uses ATC fuses, you can use this. And this little thing right here, you pull your accessory fuse out, click it in, and then you'll have your accessory fuse. And then this only works when the key's on. We're gonna wire this to some key on power, but for right now, we just hooked it to the battery. Then of course you have your ground from the panel. They supply you with alternate fuses for all these. So I know that's a 10 amp, but you can always go over here to the 5, pull it out and make it a 10. You got 30s, 2 30s, 2 20s, 2 10s, and 2 5s. This hooks up to the remote. This hooks up to that accessory wire like we just talked about. So then you have the switch. I'm working on figuring out how to use the app, but for right now, the backlight's gonna be green, and then it has a dimmable feature. So if you cover over the light, it'll dim the whole switch down to where it's basically nothing. You let off, it's brighter outside, it'll brighten it up. Obviously, we gotta go through and put the stickers on here and we figure out the final order that we wanna have everything in. But if you hit on right here, it'll power up the thing. Right now, I have it set on pulse mode, so it's 3 bursts. To get it off of pulse mode, you just double tap 3 times. And then all the switches will flash. The color codes what it actually does. So right there, now we just have it on solid. You double tap again, you can page through to where it's momentary, cut the switch off, cut it back on, And then they'll just work. Basically, if you want to wire up a horn or anything that might not be all the time on, you can do it right there with that. Double tap again, you can change it to green, which is cool just because it's obnoxious. And then you can have your flashing lights. If you were off-road or on the side of the road trying to fix something, you can turn them on right like that. You can see we got those. These knuckle mounts are for a 2017 or newer. For 2017 or newer. I have it jacked up because I don't have the truck running right now, obviously. You'll hear the steer pump gurgle. But they're steerable, so wherever you turn the wheel, they're gonna go. I got the orange ones or the amber ones because I like the way they look. But obviously you can use the white lenses or whatever you want to use down here. They say they work for most 2-inch lights. This is a 3-inch light. I think the only reason they're working is because this is a dually, so the wheels are a little bit more offset than if it was a standard, but they're supposed to work for all offset wheels, and they work for these 3-inch octane lights. So I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. You can get those from Gatekeeper. I bought those. They didn't pay me to say anything, but they work pretty cool. Drilled it out, bolt them in, they send you all the hardware, and you're good to go. So I'm really happy with them. Of course, Oxbeam sent us the light switch and everything. It's working out pretty good. We're gonna build that console eventually, put it up top, and we're gonna have some under lights, some bed lights, all that sort of stuff like that. So you'll see that later on, but for now, that's all we've got. So far, this is the first time I've actually wired up the Oxbeam and used it. I'm really happy with it. It goes together pretty easily. If you're gonna combine 2 sets of lights like we did here, I would probably tin the wires or basically solder them so that they're easier to get into the little clamp down piece on the power side. But otherwise, pretty easy to use. Really happy with the way these turned out. So if you're looking for something like this, go ahead and get you one, get you some. Like I said, it probably took us an hour total to put both of them together. You just tap it with a punch, mark it, drill it, throw them on there, and you're good to go. All right, so now we've got all the holes welded up. You can see these bigger ones were a little bit more of a hassle, but we've got them all filled in now. All these little ones across the middle where the little rubber pieces were to keep the rack from sitting, or the stuff from sitting on the roof, is gone. We just went around ever so slightly. If one didn't fill in the first weld, we just went to a different one and then came back to it so we didn't put too much heat in the panel and warp it. Obviously it's the hood, so you're not gonna see it a whole lot. It doesn't matter that much. But I still didn't want to put a bunch of extra warpage in here we didn't need to. So now we're going to go through with that flap wheel on the grinder and smooth these welds over. I've got some wet sandpaper soaking right now, and we'll go ahead and start wet sand blocking the top so we can get ready to spray some paint maybe next week if it doesn't rain. And then we'll get some nice LED cab marker lights on here and the LED cargo light on there as well. And it'll be a third brake light as well. So we'll get all that done and we'll see you here in a few minutes. All right, so we just finished wet sanding, obviously this half of the roof here. Everything turned out good. It's nice and smooth. So we're going to get us some epoxy primer. We'll put it on here. We'll shoot it up. And once we get the whole roof wet sanded, we'll shoot that up. We'll wet sand it again, and then we'll hit it with some Summit White. And we'll have a good two-tone look, and we won't be melting in the truck in the summertime here in North Carolina because the roof will be white. And not this terrible black color that shows dirt terribly if you look down there. And we'll get our new lights and our new third brake light and cargo light mounted right there. And we'll be better than a new truck because we'll have old school style. peel all this off and see what it's going to look like. All right, so we've got the paint done. We've got the new marker, cab marker lights with the LEDs in it. We're gonna put the cargo light on back here. It took us 3 times to get the paint right. The first time I didn't prep it, so I didn't wipe it down like it's supposed to. So to be doing this right here, it got all jacked up and it, what they call fisheye. So we did that. You'll see that in the video, or you've seen that in the video by now. The second time I got in a hurry and didn't set the gun up right, so it sprayed out dry. When it sprays out dry, basically it's all textury and it has no gloss because the paint didn't spray out wet enough. Third time, I put all 3 of those mistakes together, or all 2 or 3 of those mistakes, and it came out right. So it's been wet sanded all the way up to 800 because we had to get all the screwed up paint off. So it's wet sanded 800. It's just a single stage GM or Chevrolet Summit White / Olympic White. Single stage, shot it with a Harbor Freight paint gun. Taped it off, came out really good. We got to clean the windows up and stuff. Overall, for the like 75 bucks I have in it, it's great. It's on a roof on a lifted truck, so you're probably really never ever gonna see it more than from 30, 40 feet away. So that's what it looks like. Came out pretty good. We'll finish up putting the lights on here in the next video to show you what all the lights look like with LEDs in them, and go from there. Hopefully we'll have the clutch build down by then, and we'll be putting it in and we'll start sending you a video of moving.
You should make sure it's not on fire now.
Ruin a lot of crap now.
Just some plastic.
So as you'd expect when you're putting a transmission that didn't come in a truck into a different truck on a different frame, you're probably gonna have to do some clearancing. So we had to come in here and cut the firewall out for the motor, and then we had to cut the tunnel out so that we could fit the transmission in there. The test cab had a 4-wheel drive tunnel, so I cut that out, and then we used that and pieces from the firewall and the tunnel that was in the 2-wheel drive cab that we used, and we got it all fabbed up and put it into place. What I figured out as I went through this is my first time building a tunnel. If you tack it a couple places really nice and tight and it gets hot, you can take a ball peen hammer and just shape that stuff super easily. So that's what I ended up doing on the whole cab, and then I used some CAD, some cardboard assisted design, and made all the little funny pieces where it didn't match up. All in all, we probably have 6 to 8 hours in this tunnel. Like I said, it was my first time doing it, but it turned out pretty well.
All right, so we can see we got the, I guess this is, you pronounce it, Sealess brand sound deadener. It's the 80 mil stuff. We've got it pretty much everywhere. We didn't do this part because if we add the high country seats, we're probably gonna have to take 2 inches out of this pan. So don't want to have to just cut through it and waste material. So we didn't go there, but we've got the factory stuff to go back. We put the factory stuff back here. That's the front seat. I just pushed it back because I've been closing in that hole and closing up where I had to cut out the tunnel for the to pull the transmission. So we've got that done. I'm going to cut out the rest of these little holes for the back seat so we can bolt it in all the way with the seat belts and everything. And then I'm going to just make a cover that goes over that center hole right there, and we'll be good to go. We'll get all the carpet back in here. We're probably going to come up short because it's 2-wheel drive carpet, and that's probably taller than a 4-wheel drive tunnel. So we'll see how short we come up, but it should look better than just the roll-on chrome, so stay tuned. Issue with the fuel tank clearing the bed cross members right here. So we just took the plasma cutter, measured, and gave ourselves about 2 inches of clearance on either side of the fuel tank. Cut out the first 2 cross members. We're going to clean them up, cut some metal out of this cross member here and weld it in, and then it'll be as good as new, and it'll clear the forward fuel tank so we don't have to run the crappy dual tanks that they used to come with. Alright, so what I went ahead and did is took some preliminary measurements, got everything square, drew my measurements for the distance of this off the back of the bed here. So we were going to do 13 wide by 13 tall, basically a perfect square. We're going to cut these little holes out, do all this, then we will take off 4-inch hole saws, what B&W says to use. And we'll cut a hole out for this right here, for the little ball piece. And I'm gonna try to lay it flat or tuck the new piece up underneath the edge just a little bit so that it's a little more flush right here. But anyhow, we'll get that done. We'll drill the holes for the 2 U-bolts for the safety chains, and we'll put some springs on them, then we'll be good to go. I'm gonna do the best I can. If it doesn't look the best, it'll be okay, because we're gonna rhino line this anyways. So as long as the welds are smooth and it holds good, we rhino line it, it should just camouflage that whole piece right over top of it. And then we're gonna try to tighten that fuel fill up. I did get it working a little better. We get it tightened up and I'll be able to fill her up and start driving her. Right in the AMD box, we have the new patch panel piece. We're not sponsored by them. I bought that from Summit. It was like 50 bucks after shipping. I think it was like $39. It's 24 wide by 48 long, so more than enough. It'll basically do a whole bed floor section right here if you had a rotten end to your tailgate or anything. The good thing is what we need is not nearly as much as in that AMD box, so God forbid if we screw it up, we'll be able to go back and cut some more out and try again. But happy with how the hole turned out. All right, so as you can see, this thing is perfect on this C10 or K30, whatever bed floor. It rolls right in there, perfect stamp, so it's gonna match up really, really good. What we're gonna do is they kind of leave this little edge right here from AMD, so we're gonna use that edge and leave it as some lap over so we can tie it in up there. But I'm just gonna go ahead, obviously got a nice straight edge, so why not use it? So we're gonna use this edge here. Luckily they packaged it up pretty good so it didn't bend up. So we're going to use that edge. We're gonna only have to make 2 cuts, basically cut the triangle out of it, or cut the square out. We're gonna cut here. We're gonna come across all these ridges here, all those ridges up there, cut it out, and then we're gonna place it on there. What I'm probably gonna do, if it fits in there flush, is I'm gonna take some wheel bearing grease and put it on there so I can kind of mark my hole, and then I'll center drill it. And then I can weld it in there, and then we'll cut it out the rest of the way. Those other little holes for the U-bolts, we're probably gonna go with the inside ones, because why would you put them out that far anyways? We'll go with these inside holes here, and then I'll probably just drill them up from the bottom, and then we'll drop the U-bolts in from the top, get some springs and bolts and stuff, and we're good to go. Alright, so as you can see, all that measuring and stuff worked out. We have a little lip all the way around the sides and just a little play width in the front, so that'll leave us enough to have some extra to weld to. We're going to get this piece cleaned up and that piece cleaned up, and then we'll burn it in and we'll get ready to do the gooseneck cord as well. Before we burn it in, we're going to mark the hole there. Alright, we're going to take this wheel bearing grease. Got my handy dandy examination glove here, and we're going to smear it on this hitch right here, and then we're going to take our patch panel, put it back over top of it, kind of mash it down. It's going to mark it for us. We're going to center drill it. We're going to slide the patch panel up from the bottom of the bed, weld it in nice and smooth. Once we bed liner it, you'll never ever know that we did this picture.
Gotta go right through here.
Very long like that. All right, now that has some actual real potential, I would say. Going to come to about right there. And we can cut it there. The problem is going to be way back here. And this is going to basically put us in the same spot. Alright, so the only way I can make it work, because I can't bend 4-inch pipe and nobody else in town can. So I shortened this up, and I'm going to put this together like this. It's not quite a 90, so it's like super tight, so it's not going to be that hot of a corner, you know? And then, if I do that, I can take this 90, I think, and shorten this piece up, so where it's pretty short, like that, where I can, then I can still use this slip joint with a clamp, so if I ever have to take the starter off, I don't have to cut my exhaust system apart. Do you think that's too many turns in a close radius to make it run hot? The exhaust run hot?
That I could not tell you. Yeah. So you're kind of just stuck and see what happens.
Yep.
See what happens.
Because I got these 45s, but the way that you can't turn them, they don't work. You can't put one on there and then turn the other one the opposite way, because it's got to be basically a straight pipe through the frame.
I would do it, and I mean, and just see what goes on.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
That's about all you can do.
Yeah, I know. think our, oh, we're screwed. Oh, we might be okay. Might have some, there's a spark. Okay. Totally wrong direction. Isn't it?
Again. That's not gonna work.
All right. This is the winning combination. What if I cut more of that bend off? Oh, clear, right? All right, so what we've been doing for the last 2 hours or so is, this is a diamond eye 4-inch downpipe that doesn't look anything like it did when I bought it. Basically, I used this part right here. I cut an angle out of it for this part, and then I had a 90 that I bought from Summit. There was just some 4-inch mandrel bent pipe that we did this out of, and so now it sits on the turbo. It's got a nice smooth flow, smooth as it's gonna have down out. We had to cut the angle off this a little bit so that we could clear the starter. Probably have to do some encouragement with the hammer and maybe bash this back a little bit. We're gonna probably either use a 45 and drop out to go to the rest of the just factory F-350 exhaust that's been straight piped, or a 90 or something. We'll figure that out. But basically now we're not blowing 700 plus degree exhaust right on top of the starter. Obviously you can see we still have some gaps and everything like that. We're out of welding gas, so we just have these tacked without gas, so they're really crappy. And they're already starting to rust a little bit. So we're gonna get this all cleaned up tomorrow. And I'll come in here and weld it all nice and tight. And then we'll put it on the truck, finish out the exhaust, and then we'll be able to drive it without going deaf. Alright, so today we are moving the clutch master cylinder. If you watched some of our previous videos, we had drilled out the area that Chevrolet used for the original clutch setup. That setup wasn't hydraulic, so when we put the hydraulic master and everything in there, it made the pedal basically impossible to push in. If you shift it all the way through 6 gears in traffic, you're gonna have a cramp in your butt cheek. So what we did is we actually took out the speedo cable. That's the grommet for where it's at, because the MP271 has an electric speedo sender anyways. So eventually we'll get us an electric speedometer to fill in that square body dash, and it'll fit in there, look factory. So we took that hole and we ended up moving it 3.5 inches up to where it is now, right here. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna give us a 6-to-1 ratio on the pedal, so it's gonna make it a lot easier to push. We already kind of hooked it up and played around with it, and it makes it a lot easier to push. The problem is when we welded the tab on the pedal, it made the angle when you pushed it in, it would jam up the clutch rod into the master cylinder. So we're going to just hook it straight to the pedal. So what we're doing now is I taped off the threads on this master, but we're grinding down the rod here, and then we're using a 5/16 by 24 rod and a coupler. We're going to hook it to it, and then we're going to use this Heim joint right here, and that's going to give us a little more adjustability, because obviously we can thread this in and out and get it dialed in exactly right. But two, it allows it to be threaded on there instead of welded, and then if this doesn't work, we'll just burn it on there and make it permanent. But we're gonna go for this first, and we'll let you know how it turns out. All right, so we've got it tapped now. This is our coupler we're going to use right here. Like I said, it's 5/16 by 24 thread count, and we used dye and got it all on here. And so now we'll reinstall it, and we'll figure out how long we need to make our shaft, and then we'll be able to infinitely adjust all of it and get it dialed in to where the clutch will release without giving you a cramp. All right, so right here is the tab I was talking about that we welded onto the pedal. So we had it all lined up where we needed to, but when you move it out right here, it changes the angle from when you push the pedal in. So the closer you keep this to the pedal as far as your clutch rod goes, the less change in angle you're gonna have. So hopefully we're gonna have very minimal to no change, because we're gonna have it dead center on the pedal, just like the bushing is here. And that's gonna turn out to be about 2.5, 3 inches from the pivot, so it's going to make it a whole lot easier to push in traffic and more enjoyable to drive in general as a whole. So I'm going to lop this off, and we'll get it back in the truck and get our linkage finished up, and then hopefully we'll be able to shift gears and let the clutch out without spinning tires or stalling out.